Right now, I'd like to introduce Guy Pyne. He is the owner and president of Dooley Pyne, and he's here to present snow removal in this weather that does not seem like anything we would be doing right now. But thanks again, Guy, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen as you introduce yourself.
You got it. Well, good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for taking the time. Good evening, and thank you all for taking the time to visit this presentation. And my hope is that we can just kind of take an hour here and make a little enjoyment out of the snow business. And my hope is that we can kind of just learn hopefully a couple things that we didn't know, and possibly through some of the things that I have tried to put together for this presentation, it kind of make the process a little easier and a little more fluid and not as frustrating for everybody on board. I know what a difficult service snow removal is on so many levels. Number one being cost, liability, etc. And at Dooley Pyne, myself personally, I do a lot of consulting with the industry equipment dealers, primarily Caterpillar, John Deere, Boss, and I work with the research and development teams. And my employees are fortunate enough to get to test our equipment. And the great thing is that a lot of the stuff that is being used at our properties has been developed with some of our input. So I'm really thrilled that over the years I've been able to take the time and learn as much about this industry as absolutely possible. And I'm so grateful for Lorene and Julia and the rest of CAMCO for giving myself the opportunity to represent Dooley Pyne and hopefully give all of you an enjoyable presentation. So what my objective is I've got essentially three main agendas outside of just an introduction and a summary. And my thought was to kind of to make it a little bit more interactive is to kind of go through each series, and then Lorene will be able to kind of ask questions. And if anything pops up on the way, Lorene, please don't hesitate to just stop me, and you know, I'll be happy to answer. All right. So that being said, please just also know this is not my. I'm a professional landscaper and a snow contractor. Public speaking is not my forte. So just please be a little patient if I seem nervous or insecure. I don't do this on a daily basis, but I'm thrilled and grateful for the opportunity and the trust and confidence that CAMCO puts in me. Lorene, can you kindly just go a couple slides here?
Sure can. Let's see here. There we go.
Okay, so on the agenda, and just so all of you folks know, my focus this evening is going to have a lot to do with equipment, and I'll explain that more throughout the process. But just so you know, that will be the running theme of this year's presentation. So my first objective will be to introduce some successful snow planning tips that Dooley Pyne utilizes and shares with their communities. And we've had tremendous success utilizing these types of documents, this type of planning and communicating in a way that has been ultra successful. And I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't really have snow turnover in any way whatsoever. So the beauty is if you've been experiencing as a community, turnover frequent with snow removal, anything along those lines. I'm hoping that potentially I can share some of the tips to prevent that happening as frequently, and provide some ways that you can educate the contractor as a board member to kind of get the information that you require to ensure that the property is done to meet your expectations. So the first part will be just some sample documents and ideas that I'm recommending to assist you in the process. The second part is actually something that I'm really excited about, and I spent quite a few days putting it together. But it is actually a pictorial depiction, I guess I would describe it as, of the equipment that will go with that kind of obscure snow list, pricing list that you folks get, all with a bunch of numbers down the side of the page. But not being in the snow industry, what are these items? Like, what are they talking about? And why does it cost $175 an hour? So my hope is that I can kind of explain some of that and the benefits of using each particular piece of equipment based on your type of property to help the community save money, to educate, a little bit on knowing what it is you're getting when you're agreeing to that pricing, and some things that you may want to recommend to your snow contractor to say, listen, I was on a presentation. This fellow said, I'm in this type of community. I've got this set up. We operate under these parameters. Is it possible you can provide this, piece of equipment we feel would save a lot of money? So that's really what I'm here for, is just really to try to help each of you get the best out of the process and not make this so frustrating. And lastly, and very briefly, I'm just going to talk about some issues that are impeding the success of the contractors and the communities, and try to give you some suggestions on how to prepare and prevent the mishaps, and just ways that maybe we can, all just do this a little bit better. And I always find I'm a big communicator, and I really like to talk to my communities, and I really like to talk to the managers. And when they speak, I thoroughly enjoy listening. So it's kind of very easy to put together a presentation, because I've gotten so much feedback over the year by meeting all of the boards in the area, and the questions are so relatable, and the issues are all similar, and it's nice to be able to address them. And I think what I put together here will be extremely helpful. So once again, thank you all for joining, and thank you, CAMCO, for giving me the opportunity. Can we go to the next slide, Lorraine?
There we go.
Okay, so I've told you a little bit about Dooley Pyne. Dooley Pyne is a SEMA certified company. What SEMA is that is our industry, I guess, professional label. And what it requires is a lot of testing, a lot of aptitude on the subject. And I know it sounds crazy, but on a commercial scale, snow removal and interpreting the weather data and recognizing the safety concerns is an extremely complicated business, much more than it would seem. It's okay, there's snow, let's get rid of it. It's going to be 47 tomorrow. I know this is crazy. Why are we doing all of this? But there are reasons behind the madness, and I can share all of that with you. Like I said, I personally consult with a lot of companies to try to get the best products and equipment to each of you. And my organization does a lot of work and research to make sure that the best equipment is out there meeting your needs and working as efficiently as possible. We have a lot of knowledge on safety techniques. I am able to provide support in a legal forum, court, so on and so forth, as an expert. So we've been very fortunate. I've been very blessed to be able to learn a lot about the industry. And what's even more exciting is to be able to share some of it. And if it helps any of you in any way, then this time spent is just awesome. Could Can we go to the next one, Lorraine? Okay, so some questions you may ask. Why is my snow removal company not meeting my expectations? Well, the first thing and the most important topic here that I think has to be expressed is, have the expectations that you're looking for been clearly communicated, and have the expectations of the contractor been clearly communicated to you? If you can truly, honestly answer that, I think you can avoid the next 8 steps. Because the reality is the fact that you and your contractor have a relationship where you can reach out and say, hey guy, what's going on here? I don't understand this. This line item says this, or hey, what are we expecting? We're kind of on the fence here. We're seeing the temperature is going to be like this. Can you give me some advice? What can we do? We're kind of at the tip of our cost. Where can we split the safety/spending difference here? And that's where we really like to advise the clients and get their feedback and try to meet in the middle. And that's truly why I believe we don't have a lot of turnover personally in our business, which is very exciting because I like working with the same people year after year after year. Is a mutually agreed plan in place for each event? Huge, huge, huge. I can't understate it. You should expect your contractor to put together a plan, and you should be entitled to know what are you approximating is going to take place here? What can we expect? It just shouldn't be snow, and then a few hours later, a few guys show up, and then the snow's gone. A bill shows up. There's no way to justify what just transpired. Everybody's angry with one another. So putting together a plan in the first place and understanding exactly what it is, pending changes, of course, or snow can be a little finicky, but that there is at least a tentative agreed plan that you folks can go to your residents and feel confident in expressing, hey, Dooley Pine's expecting this. They're going to be on site at 6 p.m. tonight. Please be prepared. And then if there's any changes, you can simply say, you know what, change of plan. The snow came in a couple hours later. Dooley Pine's going to be on site at 8. Just imagine all the frustration on a storm by storm basis, that if you were able to put something like that on Facebook or some type of forum that you communicate with to your community members, and the contractor was able to abide by that, the relief that you would have as an organization, it's astronomical. Are changes being clearly communicated when the actual conditions differ from the predictions? So once again, Dooley Pine will put out a plan, and then we put up modifications and updates as the storm progresses to let everybody know where they are. And we try to give real world expectations. So if, for instance, we're expecting 6 hours, or let's say 6 hours of snow, and it's going to be 4 inches of snow removal. For every 4 inches, Dooley Pine expects and plans appropriately with the right equipment that we will have your property cleaned 6 hours post-storm under worst case conditions. So therefore, if you have a 12-inch storm, you can reasonably expect Dooley Pine that it's going to take 18 hours or 6 hours per 4-inch increment to get the storm completed. That may seem long, but it does take an extremely long time, depending on the conditions. And the beauty is it's not really the time it takes, it's the fact that everybody knows and expects the time going into it. That's what I find to be the most successful. If somebody knows, hey, I can get to Target at 11 tomorrow morning, that's pretty good. At least they know there's a way out, and they know they can get out of the driveway, and they see the light at the end of the tunnel. Is the contractor under-equipped, under-prepared, or understaffed per the agreed upon expectations and community needs? This is something where I'm going to provide examples and different information to hopefully prepare you to not fall under those parameters. And those documents will be in the next few pages. Is the pricing strategy in line with your board's time constraints? That's very important, and that will also follow along. Pricing strategy is how everybody asks, a lot of it is, well, how do these companies fail? Oh, well, they're time and materials. And okay, so that's just straight time and materials. They use this material, it's charged per the pound. They have this many laborers at this many hours, that's the price. Other communities, they're told, well, typically it's an incremental process. And that means every 0 to 2, 2 to 4, 4 to 6 inches, this would be your price. Or there's a seasonal option. Actually, we actually do a property for Lorraine that falls under that. And we're one of the rare companies that offers that type of approach. But it is important to understand, is your pricing strategy in line with what you're looking for? And I can help you answer that question, hopefully by the conclusion of tonight's meeting here. Does the contractor have the equipment to manage your property efficiently? I have ways for you to check on that. And that'll be in the next couple of slides. And has the contractor verbalized clearing time expectations? That's again where I talk about what do you expect? How long does it take you to clear 4 inches? You should be able to get some type of answer regarding that you can let your homeowners know and expect your contractor to do that. Are all parties on the same page the minute the snowfall begins? That all reverts back to that mutually agreed plan of action that's put in place prior, and you all feel confident that you're going forward, making the right decision. And then, this is a very difficult one, is your budget consistent with your community's expectations? And I know that's a hard one for me to explain. Look, money is truly the most complicated. It's such a root of evil in this type of business. I was telling Lorraine that sometimes snow removal feels as though those big orange trucks on the highway at Asplund, they're coming into your little home, and here they are on, my 1/3 of an acre property, and they're coming in here with 23 of those enormous trucks. What on earth is this going to cost? And it's just things in the industry that we can't control. So it feels like a lot of power and a lot of money, but really your contractor shouldn't and can't be blamed for that, because we do not dictate these commodities prices. They're given to us, and they're extreme and extraordinary. So I can apologize for the industry for that, but I know it's a very big pill to digest. And my hope is that I can show you techniques as quickly and briefly as we have here to hopefully save you a little bit of money, because a little can go a long, long way. And I'm going to try to give you all the tips possible in this period of time to help that. Okay, the next slides are going to be much quicker, I promise. Can you continue on, Lorraine?
Sure.
Okay. Holy cow. All right. So some successful solutions. Experience matters. Can the company meet your obligations? Factors to consider when you're considering or recommending your vendor. Prior history with a vendor is huge. One thing that you folks can rest assured, if you were to ask Lorraine or any of the managers at CAMCO, are you familiar with any communities that these guys maintain? Any similar to ours? Is it a similar, relationship? What could we expect? How would they do? It's great to ask and get that experience. CAMCO has so many resources, and putting the right vendor with the right customer is ideally, it benefits the manager so much you can't understand. It benefits the contractor, and it really benefits the community. Is the vendor the appropriate size and fit for the community? Very important. Size of a community really does matter. And it is very difficult to maintain a very, very large community with the labor, the equipment, the materials, the staffing, everything that has to go into it. There's a very limited pool of companies that are able to do that. So not getting yourself caught in a situation where that happens, there's there's some proper vetting in place. And CAMCO is definitely there to help you with that. Question the team members regarding their experience with the vendor. How have they done? Have they fallen short? If there was an incident, was it consistent in the industry? Oh my gosh, I really had a tough time. My guys, they were out there, 13 hours for 3 inches, and communicating with the rest of the property managers, or them amongst themselves and the board members with the managers, understanding that that was across the board. Every single company had the same exact situation. There was a little bit of icing. It created havoc. This has went through. So, let's chalk that up to an anomaly. But the company has been doing good otherwise. So let's give it a shot and stay on course and see how it pans out. I always recommend requesting a vendor list or an equipment list from that vendor. Dooley Pyne puts out it's probably a 24-page document of all of the pieces of equipment broken down for both the snow and land industry, to let the boards know when we're bidding, a property. This is what we have. And then, as we get to know the community, we break that down further and show them which of those pieces of equipment will be utilized pending their budgetary constraints. The company employees. I put quantity may matter. It's not. Look, I'm by no means saying bigger is better, but quantity may matter. If you have a 120 townhome, community with 120 driveways, you are going to need some significant shovelers if you expect to get it done in any reasonable time. So that's where I say size does come into play. I always recommend having a snow committee, or at least one board member who's responsible for assisting and making the decisions, and that can work with the team and their vendor to come up with a plan and just have an agreed upon approach going into it. One thing that Dooley Pyne does, we always invite our clients to come visit our property on a firsthand basis. And if a property, for instance, Pat McCabe is with Exton Station, and Pat came to our yard one day along with a lot of other members, but I remember meeting with Pat specifically, and we laid out the equipment that we would be utilizing on his site, which is a very large community, to let him know these pieces of equipment will be used and that we're able to meet the expectations going into his season. As he was transitioning out of another community, I realized, and I think most people would, is that it's a very big, difficult step, and anything we can do to put the new client's mind at ease. And nobody should be ashamed by showing you their yard, showing their equipment, showing you their materials. This is what we have to offer. And, it really gives the client peace of mind. Once again, the equipment and materials will be used at the community. That both goes back to that site visit. And if it's a large community, I really recommend try to get a company with the buying power that can meet the appropriate size, review their past history, and try to match up. Ask Lorene or other members at CAMCO, hey, my property's this size, it's 148 homes. What vendor maintains those types of properties? And do you have anybody you would recommend? And I think you'll get fantastic results. And please ask for references, and ask that the references be based on the similar scope of what you're dealing with. So like I said, if you have 128 homes, ask for 3 references for communities with 120 to 140 homes. And if you have driveways that need maintained, ask for 3 with driveways in about the same quantity. It really gives you an apples to apples indication. And that by talking to 2 or 3 of these communities with references, if they're comfortable, you should be very comfortable. And then just establish accountability. and ensure that the contractor is not over their head. And, I know we've all kind of found that once or twice, and it's a tough position to be in, but, just kind of taking some of these tools and solutions, hopefully we can prevent some of that. All right, I'm going to start speeding this up. All right, Lorraine, next slide. So just some documents, and like I said, this will be taped, so we can always refer back to it. And then also anybody can email me, call me, and ask me for some of these documents, even though they're not readable on this type of format. We can send them to give you examples to help you in obtaining success. So always ask for the references. Like I said, make sure they, go with the scope of work, try to get the equipment list, see what types of equipment this company has on hand. Try to get an individualized site snow plan for your property. And I'll show you a couple examples of that in the next slides. A pre-storm plan of action, like I said, that's via email. We send it out to our communities with different weather updates that we've received. And we kind of put the plan in action and then ask for feedback on it, tailor it, and try to make sure that we both enter into the storm on the same page. And of course, the WeatherWorks pre-storm goes with the plan of action. And then we send out the post-storm, the certified numbers and what actually transpired, so that you have all of the documents tied up with the snow insurance certificate, so that you make sure that everything was handled in a legal, safe way, and that everybody worked, the fastest and most efficient and safest way for the residents of your community. And next one, Lorraine.
Sorry.
No, that's okay. So Dooley Pyne, when we go, we put out references. If your vendor does not typically send them, just ask for them. We put out a blanket list every time we put out snow, but then, like I said, try to tailor that list down or ask for specific communities that may be similar. CAMCO has tons and tons of communities, and there's so many that are so similar that, I guarantee you can get the right fit. That's just a very quick sample of one page of our equipment list, but it goes through and tells you which type of snow equipment we have, which type of landscape, etc. Okay, the next one. Okay, site snow plans. So this kind of gives you an indication. These are 3 different properties that we maintain, but you can see we give these to the communities and we try to mark out as much information as we can. If you lived or were a part of these communities, you would understand these maps a little more. They look pretty crazy, if you don't know where they are. But all in all, it shows where the snow is going to be moved to, different pile locations, hydrants. It might show if there's dumpsters in the area. It might show the direction that we're looking to plow to prevent runoff or refreezing. So site snow plans that are specific to your community are something you should really have in place once you pick the right vendor. And anybody should be easily able to provide. And even myself, if I could put together this presentation, I assume the majority of people can put together a Google Earth site plan here with a little bit of writing. Next one, Maureen. Plans of action. You can't read these. I can't read them. So it's safe to say it's essentially, this is what our plan is. These are the conditions we're expecting. We're expecting this at 8 a.m., 7 a.m. We're planning on coming out there and pre-treating. We're not planning on pre-treating. All of these give you ample opportunity to come back, and it can either be, check, I'm on board with all those boxes, or, hey, listen, can the step 3 there, I'm wondering if we can hold off a little bit. Can we modify that? Absolutely no problem. This is what we feel is the best approach, but it's always open to suggestion. And as long as we get a written decision from the board, we have no problem modifying our plans. Next one, Lorraine. Documents. You should expect WeatherWorks. Companies, especially in larger communities, I know you definitely get it, but try to ask your provider whether or not they provide WeatherWorks. WeatherWorks is a service that works individually for most of the contractors and school systems, nursing facilities, hospitals, everybody that really needs kind of a much more specific forecast, and they're done by zip code versus kind of like, 3, 6, and 10, and you get the tri-state area, and this is what we're expecting. This really hits a little bit closer to home and gives you a better example as to what to expect. Snow insurance certificate. Please try to understand the snow certificate of insurance is not the landscape certificate of insurance. It is a completely different requirement. Your company, no matter who, should have snow insurance. It is extremely expensive, but in the event something were to happen, you want to make sure that it is snow specific. In fact, probably 90% of landscape carriers no longer handle snow related instances, and it's written in their terms. Some landscapers may not even realize that. So please make a special snow insurance certificate request to make sure that you're fully prepared if something were to happen. Okay, next one, Lorraine. All right. Now we're into that pricing that I spoke about. And I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. So time materials, just to give everybody an idea, that pricing is based on the actual material, labor, and equipment that was utilized during the event. It's the most accurate pricing method. So essentially, if you're getting 2 inches of snow, whatever took place, you're getting real data. It doesn't matter if it was icy. It doesn't matter if it was fluffy. This is what it takes, and this is the way it should be priced. However, the caveat to this is the vendor needs management. The vendor needs management to be active in this type of process, to be on site and to make sure that real costs are communicated with the board representative throughout the event. This can't be something, if you have this type of pricing program and you receive a bill and it's like, oh my gosh, we did not see this coming. The contractor should have representatives available to kind of talk about these costs as it's ongoing. And that's why I say, if you do have this in place, this type of pricing, just make sure that you are an active board that has a real awareness of what's transpiring, because it's not the incremental data of 2 to 4 inches that's going to dictate the price. If you're kind of a hands-off board where it's just, hey, look, if it's in that increment, we're good with it. We'll pay that price. Let's just drop it. That's a much more simplified pricing matter. It's all based on what falls plus ice treatments. It needs to have an agreed upon method of measuring. For instance, WeatherWorks. That's really the universal measuring forecast. So the reason I say that is one storm, they can't send you WeatherWorks and it says 3.4 inches. And then the board comes back and they say, well, no, it says 4.2. But then the next storm, ABC said 2.8. And it's just before the season gets started, just determine the agreed upon forecasting method. And it'll save you a lot of anxiety. The downside of this is the contractor and the community, contractor work community, they need the WeatherWorks subscription, which, as I said, it is relatively expensive. I know it's expensive for us, but we cover a lot of zip codes, and that's how it's based. And the pricing is based on just strictly a measurement, not on conditions. And then seasonal, that's the simplest method of pricing. It's best for budgeting. It really allows community to know, hey, we're spending this whether it snows or not. We don't care. It's soup to nuts. Our contracts are all zero tolerance. We have long-term contracts with this type of business. So it really gives communities the opportunity to prepare long-term and make overall enhancements to their community, so that they can, what I always see and what I would envision as a board member is, okay, it snowed a lot. Now what do? We can't afford to do anything landscaping. Okay, we didn't do anything. Now, is it going to snow a lot? I have no idea. The Farmer's Almanac, my office, Garrett in my office said to me yesterday, we're expecting a really bad winter. That's what I've got going into this. So, you know, how do you narrow that down? Seasonal is a great approach, but it is not for everybody. But at least there's options to consider, and trying to find the right one is really something that CAMCO can help you with, and I could help you with, knowing your concerns. Next slide. All right, this is a fun part that I've really worked on a lot. So I hope you enjoy this. So Lorene sends me an RFP, and on it, it says, it's time material pricing. Send me your pricing. So I send this over. and then Lorene, I assume, I don't know how it works on that end, she forwards it to you folks who get the same thing. And then we're all looking, we're saying, oh my gosh, a back was $215. And that fellow says it's 209. I don't know. I don't know what any of this means. What do I do? So on the next couple pages, I'm actually preparing a handout that CAMCO can give all of you folks. That next slide, please, Maureen. This is a description, and I've kind of taken all of the different pieces of equipment in the next couple slides, and I've broken down essentially what they're utilized for, how they can help, and it gives you a visual when you're looking at that menu list. Okay, what am I really dealing with here? And my take is it'll really help you prepare and understand some of the costs that are involved. So when you see stake body, what is the stake body? It's the bottom left picture down there. And, you know, I don't know what a wheel loader is. It's the second in there up at the top. And, you know, kind of just to give you a visual as to what to expect. And just hopefully in the next few slides to let you know how to prepare for your community and what best to use. So again, I've taken some more equipment. We have a snow raider in the top left. That's fantastic for walkways, driveways, sidewalks. You've got a regular plow for roadways, parking lots, and ATV. These all have benefits, pluses. Let me give you a great example here. If you live in a community with a road coming down, and on both sides of that road, you have parking spaces on both. And every storm you come out, there is literally a wall that is 4 feet tall, typically ice, burrowed in between all of your cars. Very, very common. That is the work of a snow plow. That is the second picture in the top left. That plow only has the capacity, and 95 maybe % of contractors have that plow. The deal is it can go right, it can go left. Typically what most do is they split the difference. Half the time they'll push it to the cars on the right, half the time to the cars on the left. If you look directly below that, there is what they call a V plow. The V plow, although it's particularly bent in that picture facing that way, it can also come opposite and work its way into like a triangular box, so to speak, where it can catch it and push it into a straight area. That would be ideal in that type of community where there is opposite side of the road parking, so the folks don't get buried in. Additionally, you could take the entire left or right side of that plow and have that come straight out while the other one's there, and you can almost build kind of like a wall going down so that all of the snow is pushing to that one direction. It gives you a lot more versatility, but they are delicate, they're extremely expensive, and not everybody's going to have them. But a great thing, if you live in that community, do you have a V plow? Yes or no? It can really put your mind at ease. Another great piece of equipment that you'll see here, and I really recommend asking for this in most communities, this flip box that you see in the bottom left. The beauty of that, when it attaches to the machines, it can go forward and act as, you know, kind of like a collection unit and push it forward. Or the beauty is it actually flips up on its side and then comes back and can pull everything. At the same point, it can go in and scoop. So it is a fantastic piece of equipment. Once again, a little expensive, but imagining what that can do in your community will really make a big difference. If you look at the Snow Raider in the top left or the Ventrac in the bottom right, what you'll see there are two machines that are probably $15,000 to $20,000 a piece. Here's the situation. You're going to see a price list with a labor charge of $50 per labor, and they're bringing out who knows how many laborers pending on the side of your community, and they're going to shovel. I can tell you that we do Marist Grove at Route 1 and 202 there. They have 19 miles of sidewalk. With the machine up in the top left, with two guys, two machines running, we cover 19 miles of snow at 2-inch increments in 3 hours. Prior to us coming in there, I can tell you with assurance, it took 60 shovelers to do the property for the 19 miles of walk. And like I said, if these two are running straight throughout the storm, every 2 inches of snow, they can take up and push off 19 miles of snow in 3 hours. Pretty astronomical. So if you see, what I'm trying to say is if you see that machine and you say, my gosh, it's $150 an hour, understand that that machine is 8 laborers. 8 laborers is $400 an hour. That's what that's doing the work of. And that's an important thing to discuss with your contractor. Next slide. Okay, this will be great. Now you're all going to get this, but this will essentially talk about the common name for the piece of equipment that's on the price list, an image of what it is, what they come in kind of in average sizes to give you an indication of the power that they have. And then what we kind of compiled was the best usage. So, for instance, a straight plow up top, roadways, lots, open spaces, it's not ideal for occupied parking lots. Once again, it'll push that barrier over there. You're going to see the V plow, typically 8 to 10 feet. It's great for plowing double-sided. It gives you much greater control and versatility in occupied lots. And then what I did was I kind of, for each one, this is very general, and I don't know all of the pricing for all of the companies, but I tried to put an average price to look for on each item to kind of give you an indicator to say, okay, this makes sense or this doesn't. And like I said, we will be able to provide you, all of you, with this information, whether it's just copying these pictures and send them to you with the image. I'm sure Laureen and I will be able to put something together after the presentation. Okay, the next slide. Again, the big difference here, you have a backhoe up top. That's that image that can do certain tasks. Then you have a wheel loader down below, much more powerful, bigger bucket. If you can get 1 to 2 tons in the backhoe, but you're getting 2 to 5 essential cubic yards, or you're talking about 3 to 4 tons of material that you're scooping. You're talking about vast amounts. So when you look at the pricing, just don't look at the pricing, look at what they can do for the community. I had a community in Exton, and they had free township plowing on their common roads. And the craziest thing, I went to them and I said, please tell the township not to come in anymore. And they said, you're out of your mind, it's free. Why am I going to pay you to do it? And I said, listen, here's the scenario. The township's coming in and they're coming down your road at 25 miles an hour, and they are blowing snow on all of the driveways you've just had shoveled, which means every time they come through, your driveway has to be redone. So I went through and I said, listen, to have that backhoe up top or the wheel loader 3 down come through and have the push box directly under it, push the snow in a way that it does not put snow back onto the driveways and have to be repeated. If you're talking about, okay, well, those 2 machines there in a big storm, that's going to be $1,200. But what you have to understand, imagine 40 shovelers reshoveling the driveways at $50 an hour at 200 homes. It's really things to look at. And, if any of you folks need an individual eye or expertise, I would be more than happy to jump out there and give it to you, even, even if we're not the contractor. I enjoy this so much. So hopefully this will all help and will be a great resource tool for you. Next slide, Lorraine. Okay, this is just a little bit more of that. Like I said, I put all this down. I know I don't have a lot of time, but hopefully this really helps. And by the way, that metal plus plow down at the bottom, if anybody has that, we actually have one in Maris Grove. We have one in Exton Station, a couple other places. That essentially is every piece of equipment in one. That plow there costs probably about $27,000, but it can pull, it can push, it can go sideways, it can go left, right. I mean, it angles, it backs, it's awesome. So when you see the price, don't necessarily be misled and think this is crazy. Ask your contractor, how is that going to offset labor? Like, break it down for me, like, why should I have this and why should I pay this? And you should be able to get a very, very cool answer on that. Next, Lorraine.
Guys,
Oh,
this
boy.
is time where you want to take questions at all?
Oh, bring it.
We have several questions that came in. If you
Awesome.
want to take some before we go on, or
You got it.
okay,
You got it.
all right. So let's go back here and had a question about fuel surcharge. Someone wants to know if it's a standard to build the fuel increase into a proposal.
Well, I can tell you that some do. Dooley Pyne actually doesn't. We kind of evaluate on it on an annual basis, and we really don't. This is personal preference. I can't tell you what other folks do. I don't really like adjusting anything in the middle. I feel that a fair time during a negotiation or middle of the contract at the end of the snow season, something along those lines. Listen, we really saw an uptick in snow. I know we're priced at this. Would you feel comfortable, adding $1.50 an hour or something? I feel that is a fair approach, and I feel that if you were to express it, in that way to the contractor, say, listen, I'm not comfortable not knowing what I'm going to be paying for, but I am happy to reevaluate at the end of the year. I will take all of your concerns into place, and if need be, we can reprice a little bit at that point. Hopefully that answers the question. I think it's really just on a company to company basis, and Dooley Pyne does not do that at all. So I can't speak for the whole industry.
Okay,
sorry.
We have another question here. So I know we're running down on time here. Asking about pre-positioning equipment. Do you suggest that? Also had a question about ice checks.
You got it. Okay, pre-positioning equipment. I know it is an eyesore. I know this. The reality and truth of the matter is, if you have one skid loader, just one, that you need to get down to your property and then bring back, it is such a time-consuming venture. It's unbelievable. First off, you do have to understand that if it's not staged and it has to get to you, if the government says there is a state of emergency, no trailers are permitted on the road. That does happen frequently. So you are without your piece of equipment if it's not there in advance. A lot of guys, I mean, if they're very hesitant to bring out equipment in the event, okay, well, it may snow, it might not, it may, what do we do here? Because the cost is so astronomical, you need the right drivers, you need the right weighted vehicle, you need it tied down appropriately. If there is anything you can do to allow the contractor to stage the equipment on site, I assure you it benefits both of you immensely. Now, we tried to do this across the board. We had a community last year where, unfortunately, they literally had no place to put a plow that was not sitting in, or a skid loader that was not sitting in front of one house. I mean, nothing, no area. So those are the communities that we try to run them back 24 hours before and then pick them up 24 hours after. Nobody wants to look out their front window and see a machine. But if you can accommodate the place and ensure that they're keeping everything neat and organized, I highly recommend it. It's really it's real. It will really benefit both of you in the long run. And then the last question was ice
Oh,
checks.
was about ice checks.
Okay,
Then we have a couple more still questions.
you got it. So ice checks, here's how Dooley Pyne handles it. Essentially, we have people on the road almost the entire winter once the snow starts. If the temperatures are low, we're out. That does not mean we're charging the customers as we're coming through by any means. But we have a skeleton crew that is out there almost every night because we have hospitals, we have zero tolerance properties, industrial, and we need to make continuous passes through. So because we have so many properties that require so much treatment on all different types of ends, obviously we're in a geographic where, okay, well, we're going to, let's say hypothetically, the YMCA, but we're passing Valley View, so the guys drive through there and then they hit the YMCA, so they hit the entire route. And if they are doing ice checks, it should be very selective and only pertain to what they are treating. So if a company is coming out, you should feel confident that, okay, they may be hitting the north side homes, and that's what you are being charged for, or they're hitting the entrances, or they're hitting the hillsides. Valley View has a very steep hill. There's 100 times I go in there and only hit the hill, and then I'll go up into their Mountain View Drive and I'll hit that little embankment because it's very steep. It's very selective, but it should be done, and it should always take place between 4 and 6 a.m. Because that is when, as that light is starting to come up, that is your most treacherous time of the day. Again, the other time window that we always hit is between 3 and 5 p.m. We try to get out to everywhere by 3:30 in the afternoon to ensure everything's safe for afternoon traffic.
Okay, we have another question. What
You got it.
What time of year is it suggested to have a signed snow contract by, and what is the industry trend?
Okay. My recommendation on everything is always earlier the better. There's no harm getting it in place and getting apples to apples. The best, I would feel no discomfort in putting out RFPs in early July if you needed it. The latest you should really go, and this really varies per community size as well. The larger your community, the earlier you want to get that out there. Because understand, you may need, we have communities that literally need 5 skid loaders, 2 wheel loaders, 50 shovelers. That's, a September RFP or an October RFP really makes it difficult for us to gather all of that by November 1st. I like to have all of my equipment out on sites by no later than November 1st. And we try to go till about April 15th when we return them to make sure that we're free, safe, and in the clear. So like I said, the bigger, the earlier is my recommendation. And the more resources you need, especially with all of the supply chain issues and everything, the earlier you want to get out ahead of it.
We have another question here. Is pre-treatment price for a community the same each time you do it during the season? If not, why not?
Okay, I can tell you this. Our pre-treatments are actually always the same, because you're going in. The idea of the pre-treatment is essentially to get down the product over the entire surface. You're not hitting anything existing, and it should be the same quantity that goes on throughout, as long as the square footage hasn't changed. The only variable I could see to that was kind of during more in COVID times with office complexes. They may have had a third of their office blocked off because parking wasn't necessary. And at that point, we would use a third of product less and reduce the price for the other 2/3. But it should be a very standard flat rate. And you should really know that going into the season. Hey, listen, it's going to take 4 tons at this amount of money each pass. And, when you agree to a pre-treatment, it's $1,100 no matter what. Ice checks, on the other hand, they really differ. They should never go above a total threshold. For instance, if your community takes 6 tons, you should ask your contractor, what is the max product that would go down here? And you should never have salt in one treatment exceed that amount. But it should always be reduced and only be for the areas that require it.
And since we just covered the equipment, someone had a question about, is there a device that does stairs?
You know, there isn't. And they're very difficult. They're very difficult. Unfortunately, the shoveler is still the best weapon there. I wish I had a better solution. In a lot of cases, and if you do have under, let's say, an inch or less of anything fluffy, I know that those blowers, even the backpack ones that your landscapers use, are loud at night. Have them come through and utilize that to get the snow off. It's a great, it's almost as if it's a drying mechanism. It's a quick, efficient way to do it. They're not shoveling. I could go through and blow an entire community of stairs for probably 10 times less the price by blowing it versus shoveling it. We just have to let the neighbors know it might get noisy throughout the night, but we're saving $8,000. So we've decided as a board to go with this.
Okay. We have like 2 more questions, but
You got it.
we're on time. We're right at 7 right now. So
You got
I'd
it.
like you to be able to finish your presentation, and then we can come back to these questions.
Okay, well, the end of the presentation is very simplistic, and you all know it. It's very basic. Need my glasses again. Labor, as you know, extremely difficult. Just so you know, when your snow removal contractor is charging, let's say, $45 a labor hour to shovel, please understand, Dooley Pine's lowest snow person makes $28 an hour. We are not making much money shoveling. At the same point, we don't know another way to do it. I can't come out and say that a shoveler is worth $75 an hour, which is why we are an extremely equipment-driven business. We try to take, if 10 years ago, if we needed 1,000 laborers to do snow, and we actually were very near that, at this point with more properties, we probably need about 300, 350. And that's because of the equipment. Equipment does so much more in so little time. If you can get a company that is equipment driven, you are going to save a fortune. I promise you. Materials are very short supply. Make sure to check on the company again, sizing, buying power. If we're hit with snow after snow after snow, calcium is bagged. It comes in bags. That bagging in a lot of cases is done by laborers. Understand they don't have the laborers. So it's just everything coming to us is slow. It's time consuming. And if we get into a back-to-back event, the reality is the materials and the supplies are going to go to the people that purchase the most. There's really no way around it. That's not to say that others can't have access to it, but it really is something in a larger community to make sure that that company has true buying power. And vendors are really facing struggles getting equipment. I talk about the equipment industry, and I talk about, your guys need to be equipped with machinery. And as I'm saying it, I'm sitting here knowing that supply chain issues at the back end is going to bite that theory, because if they did not purchase all of this equipment prior to 2 or 3 years ago, they cannot get it. I had 3, I actually had to call John Deere, and I had to get 3 contractors last year to go down to South Carolina and Florida to get the only 3 remaining skid loaders, and all 3 of them didn't have heat because they're utilized in the South. So their guys were freezing, but at least they had equipment. But just so you know, and these were larger companies, guys cannot get equipment and they cannot get parts. So it is a real struggle for the contractor. My theory is this: listen to your contractor, try to get as much as you can in advance. And listen, if they're running into something, know this: I've had these guys for 3 years. This is taking place right now. These guys have been really good to me. No, no. And if I could tell you myself, nobody's intentionally dropping the ball. These guys, their whole thought is to make you happy and to try to satisfy you, at least a couple of the owners that I talk to on a regular basis. So their struggles are real. Dooley Pyne just got very lucky 7 years ago and decided to purchase X amount of equipment per year. It wasn't a crystal ball thing. It was the fact that I was getting 0% financing. I went all in, I lucked out, and I have the equipment. But that doesn't mean that others don't, but they are limited. And that goes back to the other question with when should we put out the bids? It's going to be very difficult because if your property requires equipment and the company doesn't have enough time to secure it, even with time, they're probably not going to get it. I know John Deere is manufacturing for 2023 for their skid loaders and large equipment, and Caterpillar's doing the same. Essentially 22 is shot. So it's making life hard for the contractor. Is there anything after? Sorry, bear with me.
You want to go to the next slide?
Okay, yes. All right. So I don't know if I've given a lot of doom or gloom or not. I did not mean to, but what can be done? What can we do? Again, the biggest thing I recommend, just have an open, honest discussion with the vendor, get them on Zoom, get the board together, get a preset list of questions and say, look, where do you guys stand? We know, I had a presentation with Dooley Pyne. I know equipment's tight. I know labor's tight. I know materials are tight. What steps are you taking? What do you have in place to offset that and to minimize our risk? Ask the questions and expect honest answers. Explain to the residents that some issues will be out of the vendor's control. Again, this goes back to different things with the supply chain, but emphasize patience to them, and especially if they're a trusted vendor. And again, I say, if they have not let you down in the past, please assume they're doing everything imaginable not to disappoint you. I think Lorraine would say the same, and they really vet their contractors. So it's one of those, if they're given to, everybody's going in knowing these guys are really trying. And I will tell you flat out, if I was to let down CAMCO, it would be a big mistake because they would not take it lightly. So they really hold their contractors accountable, I assure you. So the contractor really has a lot of pressure on them from both ends, and they don't want to let anybody down. Establish that dialogue with your vendor. In this day and age with this Zoom, this is awesome. We can talk to so many people so quickly. Nobody has to get out of their home. Nobody has to leave their pajamas, keep the screen dark. It doesn't matter. Just talk to them and ask them questions. If they're not available, you've got the wrong contractor, but just ask questions to offset those problems. And I'm telling you folks, like I told you at the beginning, your questions are not abnormal. Anything you've asked, I've heard 1,000 times at every board. And similarly, it's the same 7 things, and so you're all asking the same thing. Get the right answer. And if you're not getting the right answer, call me and I'm going to advise you on how to rephrase the question. So hopefully you can get the right answer. We want you to be happy. Bid and request RFPs early, especially for larger communities. Get ahead of the other communities, establish that relationship you're comfortable with if change is necessary. And the supply chain will drastically reduce the vendor's service options and properties that they can take. If you're ready for a change, determine what you really want. What does the HOA want? Do you want better service? Do you want it to be faster? Do you want better communication? Do you feel there should be quicker action? Should there be more supervision on site? Do you want more equipment? Or all of the above? Explaining your needs to your manager will really assist them in matching you with the appropriate vendor. CAMCO has your best interest at heart. They want you to receive the results you desire. They don't want, you to be frustrated. And the more the vendor knows exactly your wants and desires, I promise you, the more feasible they'll become. If I know what somebody wants and you tell me directly and I'm listening, I am telling you with my whole heart, I'm bending over backwards, and my entire team is doing that to make, to make you whole. So, and that should be your expectation. Determine if the expectations align with your budget. This is really a big one. Supervisors, equipment, reduce and improve thresholds, quicker timelines. These come with increased cost in a lot of cases. Getting great service, it can be attained even with budgetary constraints. However, the service quality, it needs to align with the financials, which need to align with the real expectations. So I say this, and this is probably a good point to just jump in, and it'll encompass a little bit of the next line. Folks, if you have, let's say, a 1.5-inch storm and a 2-inch storm and a 2.5-inch storm and another 1.5-inch storm, and you're calling the contractor and it's listen, we're not sure if we want to activate, we're not sure, we're holding off. If this contractor has equipment staged at your community, please understand one skid loader, which you can refer to in my pages of pictures there, for the season, they can't be rented for a big storm. I can't go to Knox Rental and say, okay, you know what, I need 5 skid loaders today. If the company doesn't own them, they don't have them. So when they commit to, let's say, okay, community A needs a skid loader, that skid loader costs $17,600, whether or not it snows or not. So my point is, if you have a big storm and you have 10 inches, but you've called off the contractor, you're probably not going to have a piece of equipment, and it's probably going to take a long time, and it's probably going to take shovelers a difficult time to get there and be very hard and time consuming for them to handle once it accumulates. So really just, tell the contractor what you're going into, what you're looking for. Hey, look, we don't want any service till the very end. Come and service it, and then, okay, well, how do I make that happen? I can't put a machine out there, but I can do this. So that communication will go a long way, and both sides won't be frustrated, and they can manage the expectations. The reality is, at least for us, when we put our equipment into different places, my laborers and my equipment and my machines, they all come with a pretty significant cost. And we're in the snow business, so when it snows, we it's important that we're out there. And then I think that's about it. Just
Yeah.
make sure. Yep.
There we go. There's your information. I was going to say this is good because, yeah, unfortunately, we're not going to be able to take any more questions now because we do need to wrap this up. So if there is something that you were not able to ask tonight, or something that we didn't get to in the chat, feel free to email Guy directly. His email was also put into the chat. You can email myself. And we will have this presentation available on the website and on the YouTube channel. And as Guy stated, he is looking to put together the price list and equipment information so everybody can have, know what equipment it is when people are getting those pricing.